A holy shrine born of spilled blood. Vandalism, which helped set the shrine's date of creation. A mystery that has baffled scientists for centuries. A rectangle stretched along the west-east axis, 31 by 18.5 meters in size, with one central and four side domes at the top. Inside, there are 12th century frescoes, fragments of tempera painting dating back to the 17th century, and oil painting from the 19th century. This is how visitors see St. Cyril's Church today, representing a victory, defeat, unlimited generosity, and all-burning hatred. The history of the emergence of St. Cyril's Church is very similar to the history of the coming to power of Yaroslav the Wise. As is known, Yaroslav, the second son of the man who baptized Rus, Volodymyr Svyatoslavovich, came to the throne of Kiev as a result of a fratricidal war. But then there were other times and customs, other ideas about honor, valor, wisdom, power, and blood ties. Did Yaroslav Volodymyrovich suppose that in 100 years' time, his descendants would divide Kiev? But that is precisely what happened. In 1139, representatives of two dynasties fought for the Grand Throne. The House of the Monomach, founded by the grandson of Yaroslav the Wise, Volodymyr Monomach, and the Olhovichi, founded also by the grandson of Yaroslav the Wise, Oleg Svyatoslavovich. So the Chernihiv prince Vsevolod II Olhovich, the one that from the Olhovichi dynasty, precisely in the Dorohozichi tract, where the roads connecting Kiev with Chernihiv, Polotsk, Novgorod, Volyn, Halych, as well as the trade centers of Europe met, broke through the House of Monomach defense line and seized the power in Kiev. The new Prince of Kiev reigned until his death in 1146. After his reign, St. Cyril's Church remained on Dorohozichi. When exactly it was built and by whom, Vsevolod Olhovich or his wife Maria Mstislavovna, is the subject of heated academic debate. It is only known that it already existed in 1171, since it was in this year that the Hypathian Chronicle first mentioned it. But who founded and erected the relic and when? The Chronicle does not say exactly when. We will solve this riddle later. And now we will note, it is also known for sure that the granddaughter of Volodymyr Monomach and the English princess Githa of Wessex, Princess Maria Mstislavovna, who died in 1179, became the first inhabitant of the necropolis of St. Cyril's Church. Initially, St. Cyril's Church was planned as a family tomb, according to the principle of family tombs of the House of Monomach. The uptown Vidubichi Monastery, Iziaslavich, St. Michael's Golden Domed Monastery in Kiev. So it's no surprise that the chronicles also mention the burial in the family tomb of Princess Maria Kazimirovna, the famous hero of the Tale of Ihor's campaign, the Kievan Prince Svyatoslav Vsevolodovich, Prince Vsevolod Cherny. The sarcophagi of crowned persons have not survived. This destination of the St. Cyril's Church is testified by acropolis, specially selected arched niches intended for burials in the western part of the temple. This is one of the oldest surviving churches of Rus, which combine three styles into one: Byzantine, Kiev, and Romanesque architecture. Such a new direction of architecture of ancient Rus was the hallmark of Chernihiv architecture, which emerged at the end of the 11th, the first third of the 12th century. After the Olhovichi settled in Kiev and a Chernihiv crew arrived here for the construction of St. Cyril's Church, this trend spread to almost all the lands of ancient Rus. St. Cyril's Church was built as a cross-domed, six-pillar, three-nave church with one dome and a covering, which unfortunately has not survived to this day. Cross-shaped pillars divided it into three longitudinal corridors, called naves, and 3 transverse called transepts. The central nave and the main transverse transept form a spatial cross in section above the center of the intersection on which the dome is located. They were built from material that was traditional for that time, thin burnt brick of an almost square shape called skirton. The dimensions of such bricks are 30 by 26 by 4.5 centimeters, 32 by 22 by 5 centimeters. The walls of the shrine were decorated with frescoes that corresponded to the iconographic canons of the 12th century. There were about 4,000 square meters in total. About 800 have survived, and this is the largest ensemble of 12th century fresco painting in Eastern Europe. The lower tier of the walls of St. Cyril's church has several pieces of graffiti of the same age as the shrine itself. One piece says, "Lord, help your servant Martin Simunovich." The second one also calls for help, "Lord, help your servant Fedor, Amen, deacon." Researchers attribute the latter to the deacon of St. Cyril's church. Interestingly, even the minister of the church was not afraid of the wrath of God or the decree of Vladimir Sviatoslavovich, who strictly forbade spoiling the walls of the temples with various inscriptions and drawings. To do this was equal to damaging graves and destroying the crosses on them. That's what we call blasphemy today. Those who disobeyed were punished with fines and blows of rods. The fate of the authors of those inscriptions is not known, but in the future the human desire to leave one's mark in history was stronger than any prohibition. But these writings, despite the fact that they were spoiling the church, played an invaluable role for scientists. After all, they have become an important key to solving this question: when was St. Cyril's church built? An outstanding Ukrainian scientist, encyclopedist, folklorist, historian, philologist, ethnographer, botanist, poet from the oldest Cossack family of Poltava region, Mikhailo Maximovich, whom the Russian Wikipedia for some reason calls a Russian scientist. Although we're used to this, Russians attributed to themselves many prominent Ukrainians, Tatars, Poles, and so on. Maximovich drew the conclusion in his study that St. Cyril's church was built by the widow of Vsevolod Olhovich, Maria Mstislavovna. But the famous Ukrainian scientists, Doctor of Historical Sciences Vyacheslav Korniyenko and candidate of Historical Sciences Irina Margolina strongly disagree with this view. Indeed, in the Hypathian Chronicle, which mentions this shrine for the first time, it is stated that the monastery built on Dorohozhichi is Vsevolod's, and this means that its founder is Vsevolod Olhovich. If Maria had founded the monastery, it would have been called Maria's. In addition, the monastery and the church have the name of the heavenly patron Vsevolod Olhovich, Archbishop Cyril of Alexandria. And Maria would not have found and built a monastery in honor of a deceased unfaithful husband. After analyzing lots of materials, Vyacheslav Korniyenko and Irina Margolina came to the conclusion that Vsevolod II Olhovich laid the foundation for both the monastery and St. Cyril's church. But who and when actually completed their construction? These graffiti helped to find an answer to this question. The researchers concluded that both inscriptions were made by ministers of the church. However, in the case of the second one, there's no need to be especially persistent, as everything is written there. "Lord, help your servant Fedor the deacon. Amen." The first piece of graffiti, "Lord, help your slave Martin Simunovich," was made by a cleric at St. Cyril's monastery, because he put this writing in the altar part of the church, which lay people do not have access to. Careful searches of Korniyenko and Margolina led them to the Sofia church. It turns out that prior to St. Cyril's church, Martin Simunovich served in Kiev's St. Sophia and was transferred to the temple on Dorohozhichi after it was built. Analysis and comparison of many facts enabled scientists to conclude that St. Cyril's church was not only built, but also painted already during the life of Vsevolod Olhovich. That is, in the period from 1139 to 1146, because the two pieces of writing mentioned above were already on the built shrine. The founder of the church was not buried in this necropolis, simply because by the time of his death, the church of Saint Cyril and Athanasius of Alexandria had only just been completed. And at the birthplace of Vsevolod Olhovich in Vyshgorod, there was a more orderly church of Saints Boris and Gleb, where a place for him was already prepared. And it was more prestigious at that time to be buried in that church. Maria Mstislavovna most likely only participated indirectly in the design of Saint Cyril's church, for which she was awarded a small image on its walls. But this is not the only mystery of the old church. Another one, no less intriguing, is associated with the same Diakonikon. There is a door mounted in its southern wall, which leads to a staircase about 4 meters long and 65 centimeters wide, rising steeply to a height of about 3 meters and leading to a small platform in the southern pylon, which can be called a balcony. Scientists cannot say for sure what one could do on a site 59 centimeters wide and 65 centimeters long. They can only ascertain this. On the contrary, in the wall of the southern pillar of the triumphal arch, a nest with the remains of wooden boards is clearly traced, from which the platform was not preserved to this day. It was 2 meters 47 centimeters long and about 60 to 65 centimeters wide, and they put out various hypotheses. At the beginning of the 20th century, Konstantin Shirotsky, Ukrainian art historian, folklorist, and author of the Kiev Guidebook, was the first to put forward the theory that the pavement and the balcony are intended for new monks who had to stay in the shrine for a certain time, or for any sort of storage, not excluding the burial destination. Thanks to him, this legend became permanently entrenched and exists to this very day. But modern-day researchers rule out both of these options, though they don't actually offer anything in return. At the beginning of the 13th century, Rus suffered great misfortune. Kiev was captured by the Golden Horde under the command of Batu Khan in 1240. The Mongols destroyed the princely city to its very foundations and destroyed quite a few churches. Saint Cyril's also got the works. The invaders robbed and devastated the church of Saint Cyril and Athanasius of Alexandria. They stole the lead roof of the shrine, as a result of which the central dome and the attic of the vestibule was damaged. This was the cause of gradual and horrific destruction. In addition, St. Cyril's church dropped out of the information space for several centuries. Only 2 documents from 1539 and 1555 mention its actual existence, and even there the monastery itself is not mentioned, but its land holdings. After the Mongol invasion, St. Cyril Monastery, and with it St. Cyril's church, fell into disrepair. But even what foreign invaders did not manage to do in the 13th century was done by the country's own internal invaders just 3 centuries later.